All right, this is Openstax U.S. History, Chapter 14, Section 4, John Brown and the Election of 1860. So there was one more major event which occurred leading up to the very crucial election of 1860, and that was John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. John Brown, we'd actually encountered him before. He was a radical abolitionist who had killed people in Bleeding, Kansas, right? Bleeding, Kansas was when Kansas was opened up to popular sovereignty, pro-slavery, anti-slavery forces went there, and they killed one another. This is a picture of John Brown here. Due to events like the Dred Scott decision and everything else that had been happening revolving Kansas, Nebraska, you had a group of people known as fire eaters. These were radical Southerners. Right, these were pro-slavery advocates who were beginning to talk about secession. Now, this was something that had been sort of mentioned before by Southerners. John C. Calhoun in the Compromise of 1850 kind of alluded to the fact that, well, if the North is not able to keep its promise on the issue of fugitive slaves, then maybe the Southern states are going to leave the Union. And that's what secession means. Secession means to leave the United States. And these fire eaters are saying, look, if slavery can't be protected, then maybe it's in the best interest for the Southern states just to simply leave the United States and create potentially a country of their own. Now back to John Brown. So John Brown leads a raid on Harper's Ferry, which is an armory in Virginia. This is an attempted slave uprising. The idea is that John Brown will raid Harper's Ferry, which is an armory where weapons are held, get weapons, give them to slaves. Slaves will rise up, kill their masters, hide out in the Appalachian Mountains, and carry out this sort of campaign of guerrilla warfare, sweeping emancipation through many of the southern states. This attempted raid on Harper's Ferry goes very poorly for John Brown. He is arrested and executed after a brief firefight. So this idea that there would be a massive uprisings of slaves initiated by John Brown ends up failing. John Brown himself is executed for treason. It really galvanizes the national public. Many Southerners consider John Brown to be a terrorist, for his actions of trying to cause the slave uprising. Northerners view him as a martyr. Abraham Lincoln famously says about John Brown, he was a misguided fanatic. Maybe his heart was in the right place, but he went about it in terms of his tactics incorrectly. And so this is happening in 1859, just on the eve of the election. And this attempted raid and uprising on Harper's Ferry really feeds into the Southern conspiracy that Northerners are out to violently overthrow the institution of slavery. And so this election is very, very crucial. What you have happen is for the Democratic Party, which represents the South, two factions emerge. On the one hand, you have Stephen Douglas, who stands by his Freeport doctrine. In other words, he is for popular sovereignty. And you have John C. Breckinridge, who is nominated essentially to support the fire eaters. And these people are saying nothing short of secession might be necessary in order to secure the right of Southern slaveholders to keep that institution. So in the election of 1860, there are two Democratic candidates, and anytime you're a political party and you have two candidates for president, you're in a bad position. Douglas, who represents popular sovereignty, John Breckinridge, who represents the fire eaters. You have a new political party that's created, the Constitutional Union Party. This is a new party. John Bell is their candidate. They are really looking for compromise. They see the writing on the wall. Northerners are going their way, Southerners are going their way. Potentially there might be a conflict on the horizon. Maybe we can save the Union by compromising. And lastly, you have the Republicans, who are the party of the North, who nominate Abraham Lincoln, which had made a name for himself during the Lincoln-Douglas debates. He had become a popular national figure. And when all the votes are tallied, Lincoln wins the election of 1860, but does so in a very, very divisive race. And so you can see the map here. The red represents what Lincoln got. The green represents what Breckinridge got. Bell, the Constitutional Union Party, you can see that, the states that were in between the North and the South really wanted a compromise. And Stephen Douglas, again, a sort of compromise candidate, only wins Missouri. But in other words, you could see very clearly where the country is at on this election. Lincoln wins pretty much every single free state, loses every single slave state. And so when Lincoln is elected, that becomes the point under which South Carolina secedes from the Union, becoming the first state to secede from the Union. Right? That means they left, right? They left.